After hazing and racism allegations within the Northwestern Wildcats football program, Northwestern University has fired Pat FITZGERALD as the head coach of the Northwestern Wildcats football program. Where does Northwestern Wildcats football go from here at such a bleak time in their program's history?
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
A lot can change in a couple of days, and that's what happened within a couple of days, the last couple of days within this Northwestern Wildcat situation. Boy, this is a sad, it is a disappointing ending to what was a good era of football under Pat FITZGERALD, but it's not just what happens between the lines that really affects these young men on a day-to-day basis. It's what happens behind the scenes sometimes that can have the biggest impact on some of these kids. Boy, you thought a few months ago, I know Pat FITZGERALD was on the hot seat based on the performance of this Northwestern Wildcats program the last few years, but boy, you would have asked me a couple of months ago, how does this come to an end? This is the last thing that would have came to my mind about how the Pat FITZGERALD era comes to an end in Evanston, Illinois. I kind of held back on putting out my reaction of video or content much on this story because everything was changing. Everything was changing so much. The reports initially kind of came out on Saturday, and they were scathing reports from the Daily Northwestern, and the more reports it just kept from Saturday to Sunday, and then the racism allegations really came out on Monday. It was just a very ever-evolving and growing situation at Northwestern, and I think that's why this move needed to be made. Right? When these reports really started on Saturday, I was saying to myself, on Monday, Tuesday at the latest, somebody's got to come out and say something. Some action has to be made, and some action was made, and that was the Northwestern administration firing Pat FITZGERALD as their head football coach, because the more these negative reports were going to continue to stack up, that was really going to affect and tarnish the reputation of the university, tarnish the reputation of the football program, and then you have other things as well. It affects recruiting, it affects all these things, which as of right now, it just seems like very insignificant. Right, with especially considering all of the allegations that have been put forth throughout all of this. I want to give credit where credit is due. I want to give credit to the students at the Daily Northwestern, right? Because this was a story, months-long investigation into hazing, and the university handed Pat FITZGERALD a 2-week suspension during essentially vacation time in college football for college football head coaches. Yet on Saturday, that's when the big bombshell report was dropped by the Daily Northwestern, right? If you're at a lot of schools around the country, this is probably the one school with their great journalism program where you're not going to get away with this type of thing. So credit to the kids and the students for keeping on the beat, so to speak, and continuing on with this story and eventually breaking this on Saturday. As a coach, you got to have eyeballs on every part of your program. Being a college head coach, being a college football head coach is not an easy job. And this is just another example of that. Did Pat FITZGERALD know? Did he not know? I still think that's very much up in the air. Like when I first heard this story, I couldn't believe it. I didn't believe it. But what Pat FITZGERALD has been, and I really like Pat FITZGERALD as a head coach, what he had been able to do in developing the reputation of Northwestern football and then being able to win games, being able to win 9 games, being able to win 10 games. It is not easy, folks, to win at Northwestern. Not many people over the course of time have won at Northwestern, but you got to keep all your eyeballs on your senior leadership. You got to keep your eyeballs on the field. You got to keep them off the field as well. This is just another example of that. Look, Pat FITZGERALD, leading into this, he was a legend. Like what he was able to do back in 1995 in that great season where Northwestern won the Big Ten title and went to the Rose Bowl, and then what I just mentioned, what he had done as head coach of this program was statue-worthy. It was statue-worthy. And this is a sad, frustrating, unfortunate end to the Pat Fitzgerald era at Northwestern. He was one of my favorite coaches, I think, in this conference. I think he developed kids and really got the most out of players, maybe better than any head coach in the Big Ten, maybe any head coach in all of college football. I want to say this as well. Hazing like this has no place in athletics. It has no place in high school athletics. It has no place in college athletics. It has no place in professional sports as well. It's unfortunate that according to these allegations that this is what has happened. Now, I keep on saying according to these allegations because my head is still spinning. My head is still spinning. I read these reports and they were sickening reports, to be brutally honest with you. It made me sick, these types of things. Because, like, think about these parents that send their kids off maybe multiple states away to Evanston, Illinois, to the Chicago area, and they trust Pat Fitzgerald, who then trusts his senior leadership to have these kids have a great experience and really develop as young men, which is something Pat Fitzgerald has been saying for a long time. And then to hear this as parents, to hear this, because you trust a coach and you trust the culture that they have developed at that specific university, to hear this, that really, it really makes me sick. It really has. But there were so many reports kind of going back and forth. First, what happened out of the Daily Northwestern on Saturday. And then you had players kind of come back and say, well, wait a minute. I did not see this. I did not see this part of this. They were really a lot of pro Pat Fitzgerald tweets, and a letter was written. And there's been so much kind of going back and forth. It's still very hard to believe at this point in time. But the reality of the situation is Pat Fitzgerald is no longer the head coach at Northwestern. Northwestern needs a completely clean house. This is something that needs to be just wiped with bleach of the situation, because Northwestern had such a great reputation, and for something like this to happen, even if it's just allegations right now, right? And who knows what's going to happen down the road as this story continues to evolve, but you need to bring in a coach. You need to bring in a culture that is going to reestablish what Northwestern was and what Northwestern can be in the future. Two names really popped up into my mind as maybe potential guys down the road. They're probably going to go with an interim coach here this season. And boy, it is going to be a tough season. It is going to be a tough season for these players. Like, look what's happened on the field the last two seasons for Northwestern. This was a team that was already fighting an uphill battle. And now you add on this and the negative impact. Who knows what some of these players are going to do? Who knows what might happen here in the coming weeks, in the coming months. And some of these players just might say, yeah, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. And they might transfer out, and it might become even more difficult for Northwestern right now. But two names that really stuck out to my mind: former Wisconsin defensive coordinator Jim Leonhard, right? You talk about a tough Big Ten mindset, something that Northwestern had at times there under Pat Fitzgerald. Jim Leonhard could possibly bring that to the table. Why not get a coach that's already wearing purple and coaching the Wildcats? Chris Kleiman, I believe, would be another fantastic hire in the Big Ten, but I think it's going to be tough to get him out of Manhattan, Kansas, as of this point in time. This program needs to be wiped completely clean. They need a new image. They need a new reputation. It is going to be a tough season for everybody involved for Northwestern football in Evanston, Illinois this season. It is an unfortunate end to what Pat Fitzgerald has built. He was a legend at Northwestern. He was Northwestern football, and it's very fortunate that this and these events and this result has ended up this way. I want to hear your thoughts on this. Where do you think Northwestern is going to go in the future? Until next time. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.